If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for another live stream episode of the show. I really appreciate it. And of course, I hope all of you had a great Christmas, at least half as good as mine was, and next year is much better than this year was. So that you know, if you're a premium member, also at 10 p.m. Eastern time tonight, I'm going to be publishing a new episode of the show here. Again, you'd have to be a premium member to listen to it. But if you're not a premium member, it would be as easy as going to dogmanencounters.com, visiting the podcast page, and then you can find instructions there how to become one, or even maybe take out a trial so you can see what it's all about. But having said that, before I bring in tonight's guest, as you listen to him talk, if you start to wonder to yourself if this guy isn't just about the nicest guy you've heard, well, it's not just you. He probably is. He's a really nice guy. Of course, I'm talking about tonight's guest, Aaron Nicely. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me on the show tonight.
Well, thanks for coming on. We appreciate your time. Aaron, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, I'm from Allegheny County, Virginia. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I like to hunt and fish and go ginsenging, mushroom hunting, and just spend a lot of time outdoors.
Yeah, you definitely are an avid outdoorsman. You got an early start. Your granddad actually taught you just about everything you know about the mountains. I'm wondering, though, when did he start taking you out and showing you the ropes?
When I was 4 and 5 years old, my granddad and daddy would take me out and we'd hunt, and my granddad showed me about hunting mushrooms and looking for ginseng and deer hunting, turkey hunting, trout fishing, just at an early age.
Wow, what a great way to grow up. If more kids were brought up that way, the world would be a totally different place. Speaking of your granddad, he told you about an unusual experience he had in Clifton Forge, Virginia. What happened to him?
It was actually my dad. He had an experience here in Clifton Forge. He was hunting, and he was telling me, he said that he had this thing come up over the ridge on him one time, and he was watching it. When it got up to the top of it, he said it saw him and reached out and grabbed the tree it was at, almost like a pole, and spun around, and it went down the side of the mountain, but he said it looked like a little chimpanzee. And just like me, he's spent a lot of time out in the woods and on the mountains, and if he says it was something that, wasn't supposed to be there, I'm inclined to believe him.
Yeah, I can understand why you would. After seeing that day, was he a card-carrying believer in Sasquatch, or did he still not understand what he had seen?
He just told me that he never really knew what it was. He didn't understand what it was that day. It looked like a little monkey to him.
Oh, I'm sure it did. Wow, it's a shame that he didn't come to grips with what was down the road. Or maybe he did, just didn't want to tell you. It's hard to say. Did your dad or granddad ever tell you anything about Dogman?
No, my dad never told me anything about Dogman. And really, there was not a lot of people around here that I've ever heard say they seen one. And, just with the experience that I had, it was far-fetched to him, really, I believe.
Oh, of course it was far-fetched. I mean, after all, there's no way that anything like that could be out there if they haven't seen one, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we know the truth on that. I don't fault them. I mean, when you spend years upon years, your whole life out in the woods, hunting, fishing, hiking, doing whatever, camping, and you don't see one of these guys, it's all too easy to think that, okay, I've spent so much time out here that if they were out here, I would have seen one. But that's just not how it is. It really isn't.
Like me and you were talking, the woods and mountains around here, it's just a vast place. There's no way that anybody could see everything that there is to see in them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, anything could be out there. Aaron, from what I understand, when you were growing up, werewolves were your favorite movie monster. Why so?
Absolutely. I just loved them. It was, I'd watch werewolf movies, and silver bullet. Everything that come out is just it hit home. I loved it. It was just my favorite monster growing up.
Huh, I understand. You've got really good taste. Speaking of good taste, let's just get to it now. Go ahead and announce what the best werewolf movie of all time is.
Dog Soldiers.
Batman. Let's do that again. Go ahead and tell us what the best werewolf movie of all time is. I'm just messing with you. When I have guests come on and we talk about werewolf movies, I'm always touting how Bad Moon's the best werewolf movie, which I think it is. But yeah, there are tons of other werewolf movies out there, like what you mentioned, that are really good. So that's just one man's opinion.
I'll have to check it out for sure.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
I've never seen that.
Wow. Yeah, you need to watch that. If you do, you just might change your mind on what's the best one.
You're absolutely right. I believe I might.
Yeah, there's a good possibility of that. You were turkey hunting when you had your encounter. Had you
Yes, I
been
was.
doing much in the way of turkey hunting before that?
Oh, absolutely. My dad makes turkey calls, and I use his. And ever since I was little, I just fell in love with it. Just being able to, call something and get it to come tell you and trick it. And they're smart, and it's hard to trick them really around here. So sometimes they don't even answer calls. But yeah, I've done a great deal of turkey hunting.
Yeah, they're so smart, it's hard to trick them anywhere. Of course, I don't hunt them, but I've heard a lot of people talk about how difficult it is to effectively hunt them. So I can only imagine. What kind of rifle did you have in your hands that day?
I had a Marlin 22 Magnum. It was a Marlin Model 25M, and had a Barska 3-9 scope on it.
Wow, so yeah, you were really undergunned for anything like Dogman. But of course, when
Right,
you head into the woods, you weren't going out with the intent of trying to take one down. So that's understandable.
right, absolutely. It was the last thing on my mind that I was going to see it. Anything like that.
Oh, of course. You never expect to see one until you do. You were close to a national forest when that encounter happened. Which national forest was it, and just how close were you to it?
Well, just out of Iron Gate, Virginia, is a place called Glen Wilton, Virginia, and it's off 220. It's an interstate that runs through there, and you go about 2-3 miles back, and you come to a bridge. So I guess it would be, I don't know if that's George Washington National Forest or not back in there, but in Glen Wilton, Virginia.
Wow, you've got so many good forests around there that you can pretty much take your pick on where you go when you do things like turkey hunt or you name it. Yeah, that's got to be.
It's beautiful here, man. It's a hunter's paradise, really.
Yeah, I've been to Virginia, and I couldn't agree more with what you said. It really is beautiful. How much has your encounter changed your interest in heading back into the woods, though?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've been hunting a whole lot more since then, and with my encounter not being like most of the other people's encounters being bad, I haven't had a problem going back in there. But I do often wonder if I'm ever going to run into him again. I think
Well,
about it when it's dark in the morning and you're heading in with a little flashlight, what you gonna bump into.
oh, sure. You have an encounter with something like that, it's only natural that you're going to wonder if you're going to have a second encounter. So, yeah, that's totally normal. All right, Aaron, please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Sure, absolutely. Like we were talking about, I turkey hunt and I hunt a lot, and we were talking about Glen Wilton, Virginia, and I like to turkey hunt back there. And I was heading into Glen Wilton one day. You go across this bridge, and there's a set of train tracks there. And you go across the train tracks, and you go right or left. And I decided I was going to go left. And down the roadways, there's a power line. And I don't know how a lot of other people turkey hunt, but when I go into the woods after a turkey, I like to hear a turkey. And I'll hit my call different places and try and hear one gobble and ease on up on him and sit down and hit the call again, try and get him to come to me. And I'd stop the road up there. There was a big long power line there. And I just wanted to see if I could hear a bird. And when I got out of the truck, I had my turkey call there. I had my rifle over my back. And I hit the call a couple times, and I didn't hear nothing. I didn't hear no turkeys gobble or really anything going on. But that's normal. Every now and then you might hit the call and you won't get on one right away. You might have to hit it a couple times or move around and find one. And about the second or third time I hit the call, this big black thing come out up in the power line about 200 yards up in it. And it looked like a black bear to me. And, I'm getting excited. I was like, that's pretty cool. I called in a black bear to my turkey call. I was like, that's the first time for it. I was like, but I know predators will come looking for easy prey on turkeys. They might hear it and come in thinking they might get a quick meal. And I was like, well, I caught in a black bear. That's pretty cool. And I got my hands out in front of me. It's like a disc that I'm holding in a striker. So I don't have to move a lot to strike it. And I strike it again when it stands up. And I'm thinking, I was like, I've never seen a black bear stand up. I was like, it's awesome. And he's leaning back and forth, side to side, like left to right, like he's looking down that power line for a turkey. And I pulled, like we were talking about the rifle that I had. I carry a rifle with a scope. I wanted to get a better look, not to harm the bear or anything, but just to look at him. And when I moved the gun off my shoulder and up, he must have seen me. And he dropped back down to all fours. And when I'm looking at him through his scope, it's not a black bear. It's a black wolf-like animal. It's got a long, bushy black tail, canine ears, long. I remember how long its snout was. Just thinking, this isn't a bear. I was like, but he was standing up, and he's moving from right to left across this power line. It's probably 50 yards wide. And that's about all the time that I had to look at him was through that scope as he was moving. And I'm thinking, I was like, was this somebody's dog, or is this an animal? And growing up, like we were talking about, my granddaddy and my daddy teach me to hunt. I don't shoot at nothing I'm not sure of. And it was definitely something that I was unsure of, and just, it was like shock and awe. It wasn't anything scary that he did to me, like menacing, or that he stalked me out of the woods, but just, seeing something that's as big as that was standing up, and then it turned out to not be a bear, it blew my mind.
Oh, I'm sure it did. I don't doubt that at all. You obviously had that rifle with you, but did you have a backup weapon?
No, I didn't have any backup weapon, just a 22 Magnum. And honestly, like we were talking about it, I wasn't trying to shoot at it, really. I was not sure of what I was, like. It was just crazy to think that this was a bear, all in my head all this time, until it drops down and I'm looking at it through the scope and it's a canine.
Yeah, I can only imagine the thoughts going through your head when you were seeing all that play out. You had to be mind blown about that. Did you think that you'd call it in a black bear due to the sheer mass of the creature, or body parts that you saw on it at first?
The mass of it and the color, it was solid black.
Yeah, that's understandable. Due to the slope of the ground between you and it, were you above it or was it above you?
It was above me, looking up the power line.
Did it ever put its muzzle in the air and try to wind you, or did it just keep its head down the whole time for the most part, other than standing up onto its back legs?
Before I looked through the scope is when I believed that it was looking around for that turkey. And because when he was bobbing left to right, I believe that he was looking down through that power line trying to spot a hen, that hen he was hearing.
Yeah, that just might be what was going on. Some eyewitnesses report when they see a dogman moving in the area when they are eyes on that some dogmen look smooth in their movements and very well balanced. Other people report that the dogmen they saw look twitchy and off balance, almost like they're walking on high heels. Well, the twitchiness is kind of like a tweaker, and the off balance movements basically it's what you would expect to see if a woman's trying to walk in really high heels who doesn't know how to walk in them very well. Did
This
you
thing was
see
agile.
it was
He
agile?
he was moving smooth through her. He like he'd been there 1,000 times. There was nothing clumsy about him. He stood up, and other than bobbing left to right, there was no. He wasn't shaking or stumbling. And when he hit all fours, it was just like watching a wolf walk.
Did he make much noise when he was getting out of the area?
I never heard anything out of him. I never even heard him coming in.
Yeah, that's par for the course. Did all the ambient noise stop when he came into the area?
Like I was telling you, when I was calling, I didn't hear anything that noise. So it was super quiet. I didn't really hear any birds or any turkeys clucking or gobbling or crows. And it didn't make any noise itself. It never let out a howl or any kind of grunts or groans.
Huh, well, yeah, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it seems like they just appear and that's all there is to it. Before I move on, everybody listening, if you have any questions that you'd like for me to ask Aaron, please type them in all caps. If you're in the live chat, that is, please type your question in all caps so I don't miss it. That'll make it real easy for me to see. Aaron, you mentioned the fact that it had a very long muzzle. How long would you say it was, though?
Longer than a German Shepherd's, but under a foot. I'd say it was about 9 inches.
That is pretty long. Due to the size of his head, did that muzzle seem to be disproportionately long still or fit size-wise?
Size-wise, it seemed about fit to the animal. It was very large. It was a large animal.
Huh. Yeah, well, if you're that big, then if you have a long muzzle, long ears, they can still look proportional. So that does make sense. Did you get the impression that it moved off away from you because it was upset about you seeing it or you being in the area or for some other reason?
Most definitely, when I moved that rifle and it seen me move, it was heading on out of the area. It did not. I don't believe they're ignorant. I'm sure it knows, just like the animals around here know what a hunter is and what to go around, what not to go around. It was just, I'm sure we were both shocked.
I don't think it was shocked. I think it knew that you were there before you did, but I could definitely understand why you would be. Yeah, almost anyone would be seeing something like that, definitely. Well, let's get to some of the questions now. The first one on deck is from Jamie, and Jamie wants to know what color eyes did it have?
Looking through that scope, I couldn't really see and tell. I want to say yellow. If I said anything at all, I'd say yellow is what it looked like. Just that was the only thing that really stood out, other than the teeth on the face from how dark it was.
Yeah, that's a commonly reported color for their eyes. So that fits. Al Santoriga, hey Al, he's got a question for you. He wants to know how tall it was.
I'd say at the very least 6 foot tall, because that's about how big the bear are around here. It could have been between 6 and 8 feet tall, is what I'm guessing. It was a very large animal.
Since you two weren't level on a level grade, it would be really hard to estimate accurately. So, yeah, I mean, all you can do is guess in a situation like that. So I
Right.
get it. I do. The next one up is from Tiffany Harding. Hey, Tiff. Tiff wants to know, did it look like it had thick hair?
It had black hair like a wolf would have. It wasn't like it was overwhelmingly long or thick. It was, if you look at a timber wolf or a coyote or a German shepherd, the way that the hair flows down it, it had hair similar to that. It had thicker hair on its tail mainly, it seemed to me, than anywhere.
It's funny you mentioned that because Ian Consul wants to know, did you see a tail?
Absolutely, and that's what let me know that it wasn't a black bear, that I was seeing something that was not a black bear. And once I got up towards the face, it was canine. It was way longer than any of the bears that I've seen.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't take long for you to decide that it's definitely not a black bear after you see those features. Did its ears sit on top of its head or on the sides of its head?
They pointed up like a German Shepherd's ears would look.
But were they mounted up on top? Or some of them actually have them almost down on the sides where a human would have them?
It was up top. Like if it would point it up, it would go straight up. It had two, I could see the tips of its ears through the scope.
Okay, I see. How tall would you guess that they were?
They come off the head probably 3 or 4 inches.
Okay.
About the size of a bear's ears or a wolf's ears.
Yeah, well, that's fairly tall. That is. Al Santoriga wants to know how much you think it weighed.
I have no way of guessing how much he weighed. It was over 100 pounds, over 200 pounds. I thought it was a larger black bear that had come in, really.
Yeah, I'm sure that was probably the last thing on your mind, trying to guess its weight at the time. I've
Absolutely.
mentioned, oh, definitely. Yeah, that's human nature to not even think about something like that. When I've been a guest on other people's shows, I've mentioned this before. There's a scientific principle called square cube law. And square cube law states that if you double the size of an object and keep that object's proportions the same, then the weight of that object will multiply by a factor of 8. And if you have any doubts about that scientific law, here's a good way to break it down. If you take a cube that's 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot, and that cube weighs 100 pounds because it's made out of something with that kind of density. Well, if you increase the size of that cube to 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, to make a structure that size out of those 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot blocks, let's break it down. You'd have 2 1 foot by 1 foot cubes side by side. You'd have 2 of those cubes stacked on top of the bottom 2. That's a total of 4. And then you would have an identical stack right behind that stack of 4. So you'd have 8 of those blocks that are 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot to make a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot structure. So when it comes to Sasquatch, Dogman, if these guys had the same proportions that a human had, which they don't, they're more robust in most cases by quite a bit. But if they did have the same proportions, if you took a 6-foot man, for example, and had that 6-foot man increased in size up to 12 feet and kept all the proportions the same, as hard to believe as it might be, if his proportions were kept the same, now you're dealing with a man that weighs 1,600 pounds. So, yeah, just something to think. When people see Sasquatch and Dogmen, I realize it can be really hard to estimate their weights. But in most cases, people grossly underestimate their weights, as I just laid out by sharing that scientific principle with you. The next question on deck is from Mr. Nielsey. And Mr. Nielsey wants to know, did you notice any unusual smells?
No, I did not. I didn't smell anything. It didn't have any odors or anything in the air.
Also, too, you're far enough away from it where, unless the wind was really blowing in your direction in your favor, you wouldn't have smelled it anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. This next one up is from Michigan Meat Eater. I'm glad to hear he's doing better. I guess he was sick for a while there. Michigan Meat Eater wants to know, how quickly did it cover the 50 or so yards of the open power lines?
When it hit back down to all fours, it was a matter of seconds before it was across the power line and gone.
When they want to move, they definitely can. They can move with a purpose.
It was covering some ground.
Oh, no, I believe it. This next one up is from Scott Langhorst. And Scott wants to know, did it have a mane like a lion?
It did not. It was very wolf-like in features, just large.
Well, some do, some don't. So that fits. The next one on deck is from Casey Rich 13. And Casey wants to know, did you see its legs? If yes, what did they look like?
They were long and like canine legs. They were proportionate to a wolf or a dog.
So it's definitely a canine type then. That solves that. Next question is from Glenn Kamada. Hey, Glenn. Glenn wants to know, well, I guess that's the same question there. You wanted to know if it had dog-like legs, so we can move
Absolutely, it did.
past that one. Yeah, sounds like it did. The next one up is from EUC Houston, and EUC wants to know, was it panting like a dog or a wolf?
Yes, through the scope when it was crossing back towards the power line and I was looking at it, it had its mouth open and I believe it was panting. So it did walk with its mouth open.
Yeah, it must have been moving fast before you even saw it. So that would explain that. D Truth wants to know, what would you guess on weight and height? I guess we already covered that, but I guess he wants to know about eye color. That's something you covered as well, so we can move past that as well. This next one is from Ann Consul, and Ann wants to know if you saw its teeth.
Yes, I did. It had teeth like canines, longer white teeth. It was very similar to dog teeth.
When you saw those teeth, I can only imagine the thoughts going through your head.
Right, I knew it had some teeth on it for sure.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Were you able to see the teeth clearly enough to tell if its teeth were different from dog teeth and that? In a dog's mouth, not every tooth is really sharp.
Unfortunately, no, I didn't see every one. But as I was scanning up and down this animal, when I seen that its mouth was open and seen its muzzle, and it had teeth in its mouth.
Oh, I'm sure it did. Yeah, that's like a staple for these guys. The next one on deck is from Stella. Stella wants to know, and this is kind of a question that's been asked, but maybe not in this way or this angle. She wants to know, did it seem like it was on a mission, as if it was very focused?
Yes, it did. It came in looking, I believe it was hunting. I believe it heard the turkey call and was coming in and looking for something to eat. When it stood up and was bobbing left to right and looking down that power line, it was focused on something. It was looking for that bird.
Well, I don't need to tell you. I'm sure you know that grizzlies in a lot of places, when they hear a rifle shot, they'll come running looking for a free meal. So that might be what was going on there. Maybe he knew that you were hunting and he was trying to be opportunistic about it.
Yeah, he could have been trying to slip in and get behind a bird that was coming I didn't know about. Maybe he was going to get the bird.
Yeah, if you did shoot a bird anywhere near, it's not like you're going to be able to take it away from him. So,
No, he could have had it.
Yeah, I'm sure he knew that too. So I don't doubt that at all. This next one's from Christy. Christy wants to know, did it cause you to have nightmares and how long did they last?
No, I've never had a nightmare about it. I've often thought about it if I was ever going to run into it again or see something like it. And other than that, no, I haven't had any nightmares or fears of it.
Because of how they look and their demeanor, it's all too easy to think that these guys are always really intense and they're going to act in a really nasty way when you have an encounter with one. But yeah, that's not always the case, as you found out firsthand. Sometimes people have encounters that are almost benign, and thank goodness for that. Thank goodness they're not always all bad.
Absolutely, and it was a very calm, quick encounter that I had. He did, like I said, he didn't come after me. He wasn't snarled up at me and making noises or mock charging like a bear would. He come out and stood up and was looking around trying to find something. And when I moved and pulled my gun up to look and see what I was seeing, he dropped down on all fours, and that's when I seen that this was a canine. It had a long black bushy tail and was walking on all fours, had a long muzzle. And he eased on out and away from me. He didn't come down towards me. And in a way, like me and you was talking about, it was almost like, hey, you didn't shoot at me, you didn't harm me. It's like, I'm not going to bother you. It's like we're both just here.
Yeah, if you have to have an encounter, that's the best kind to have, definitely. And I'm so glad, like I've told you before, that this didn't affect you in a negative way. With that in mind, though, does that mean that you didn't start carrying a backup weapon into the woods with you whenever you would go?
I used to, honestly, a lot, and it was just a wonder that I didn't that day. With turkeys, I didn't really have anything in my mind that I was going to need backed up, but a lot of the time I'm carrying a Smith & Wesson Model 19 357 Magnum or a 1911 45 ACP as a backup gun, and I carry a Buck Light pocket knife. And but since then, really, if I seen him again, I wouldn't shoot at him if he wasn't bothering me. I didn't feel threatened by it at all.
I'm glad you know better than to shoot at one, especially with the 22 mag. Yeah, that wouldn't be a good situation at all. It really wouldn't. After you had the experience, did you take it upon yourself to try to warn everyone that you knew about what you saw?
I told family members and friends about my encounter, and you get mixed things. It's like some people are like, "Wow, you really seen that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then some people are skeptical. You'll get snickers and laughs, and like I was telling you, I'm even willing to come on here on the show and risk my credibility as a hunter as how serious I seen this. I would take a polygraph test. There's no doubt in my mind I seen a bipedal black wolf in Glen Wilton, Virginia.
Yeah, once you saw it stand up and especially saw that long bushy tail, yeah, that removed all doubt that it wasn't a black bear because they don't come that way, definitely. Well, this next question for you from the live chats from D Truth, he wants to know how far was it from you?
I'd estimate about 200, 250 yards. And when I looked at it through the scope, I was using a 3-9 Barska, and I had it set on 6 power, so it zoomed right in on him.
I'm sure a big part of why you handled this experience so well not only dealt with the fact that it left the area, it absconded when it saw you, or when it looked at you. I'm sure it already had seen you, but the fact that it was so far away. I just wonder if it was 50 feet from you, how much different this would be.
Man, I have thought about that, and maybe it would have been a scarier experience for me. Maybe even if it didn't charge, it was a big old animal, and especially like me and you were talking about, seeing things that's unusual or abnormal. It's hard to say really how if it was closer how it went.
Yeah, it's one thing to have an experience at 200 plus yards with one of these guys, but at close range, that changes everything. It really does. Yeah, that's not
Yeah,
a
to be
good.
right up on top of something like that, it put you in a bind. Like you were saying with your experience, it would make you feel right alone.
It would. Yeah, mine was with a Sasquatch, though, but it makes you feel awfully lonely. It definitely does. You told your wife about your experience. How did that go?
Yeah, I told my girlfriend, and she was supportive of me. She believes me. She was very proud of me for coming on the podcast tonight and talking and sharing my story with everybody. She's been very supportive of it. Every now and then she'll give me a hard time, tell me maybe he might be following me around and I might bump into him again.
Oh, no. That's not right. But it sounds like she's a keeper, though. I really like that. The fact
Absolutely.
that
Yeah, she's real supportive of everything I do.
that's great. That's how it should be. You've got another family member who's actually listening in tonight. Who is it?
I got a little girl listening to the show, and I was real proud to have her listening to me come on here tonight.
That's great. What are her thoughts on all this? Does she believe you wholeheartedly, or is she not sure?
She's 5.
Well, that's great. She's getting an early start, that's for sure. Did you have any misgivings telling her about what happened to you, being afraid of how it might negatively affect her?
Well, rightfully, I've never sat down and just told her about it. My mom and daddy are tuned into the show, and they said they'd have her there listening. So it's probably her first time ever getting to listen to the story.
Oh, I see. Well, no one would know better than you if she's ready to know about these guys. So, yeah, I've got all the faith in the world in you that you're making the right decision. This next question is from Walter Kokubinski. And Walter wants to know, did you see the Dogman take steps or did it glide?
It didn't glide, it took strides like a dog. When it hit all fours, I never seen it take a two-legged step. It stood on its back legs and rocked left to right, looking down through the power line. But when it hit all fours, it did take steps. It strided like a dog.
I think the reason why Walter wanted to know about that is a lot of Sasquatch eyewitnesses report seeing them glide. It's not like they're taking steps. It's almost like they're just gliding like a cross-country skier or something. Christy's got the next question for you. She wants to know, did it make a sound?
Never heard any sounds. I didn't hear it howl or bark or growl or anything, and really it didn't make any sounds when it was moving on the ground. It was very agile animal.
I see. Well, this next question, I guess we haven't really gone over this. You mentioned about the thickness of the coat. You weren't all that sure that it had a dense coat or anything, but Glenn Kamada wants to know, was it well groomed?
I could tell it wasn't manged. It didn't have any missing patches of hair. Very healthy coat on it.
That's one of the many funny things about these guys. Some of them look like they just left a beauty parlor. Their fur is perfect, in perfect condition, but when you make a living the way they do, it sure makes you wonder how that could be.
Right, to be in the woods the entire time. You see bears missing patches of fur where they're rubbing trees and scratching their back, or mange as you got into foxes or coyotes around here and missing patches of hair out of them or bald tails.
Oh, sure. And you're going to have leaves and all that other kind of stuff in your fur too, because you lay down when you sleep out there and that's what's going to happen. So, yeah, it's just really hard to wrap your mind around. It really is. This next question for you is from D Truth, and D wants to know, has the encounter stopped you from going back? Which you said that it hasn't. You still go back all the time. He wants to know, if so, do you plan on taking more than a 22? Which you answered that as well. So we can move on to the next question. This next one is from Andres Carrizales. He wants to know, did you notice certain times of the year you went hunting that the area was dead, i.e. no game?
No, I've never been through there. It's pretty thick with game through there. It's one of my favorite spots to go. It's just like a haven for turkeys and deer. So usually when I go back through there, I'm finding turkey and deer. I found some dead animals back through there, but not that it was dead and didn't see any game.
Well, too, I mean, there are so many resources in those Virginia mountains that unless they spend a lot of time in one particular area, you're not going to deplete the resources there. So that would make sense. It would. Isaac Millette wants to know, can you express more on how you felt realizing it wasn't a bear? Did you feel anything supernatural? Would you like to see it again?
When I seen it hit the ground and I seen that it had a tail on it, it blew my mind. I was shocked at what I was seeing, and really it was just, going through my head. It's like, well, what is this? And it's like, why was it standing up? And just from going, your brain thinking that you're seeing something else and then immediately realizing that you're seeing something totally opposite of what you were planning to look at, it threw me off. As far as supernatural, I didn't feel any kind of ghost vibes or otherworldly vibes from it. And yeah, I was talking to him. I would like to see it again. I asked if other people that had seen it had encountered it more than once, and was just a pleasant experience, really, to be able to encounter something like that and not have a negative experience with it and be able to talk to other people about it.
Well, it goes without saying, thank goodness it was a positive experience for you because, you know, it can be a lot worse than that, definitely. And if you have another encounter, I hope it's the same way. I really do. This next one is from Michigan Meat Eater, and he wants to know a lot of people describe having the Dogman, that is, having too many teeth for their mouth. Did this seem to be the case or no?
No, it was very proportionate. There was nothing that seemed like there was too many of them. The main thing I seen hanging out were the canines up top and the canines on the bottom through the scope.
Some dogmen have teeth like that where it seems like they're crowded and there's not enough room in their mouth for them. Other dogmen don't. So there's no rhyme nor reason on that. Casey Rich 13 wants to know were the forelegs, i.e. the arms and paws, hands, like a dog's or a human's?
Where it had hit all fours and was walking across this power line, I couldn't see its hands or paws. I couldn't answer that question. Its forearms and hind legs were very much of a dog's. They didn't seem to be human-like, but I guess that could totally change the game if you could see its hands.
Yeah, that would change the game. And I realize you're looking at through a 3x9 scope, but it was a 3x9 scope, and it was at a greater range than 200 yards. So you're only going to be able to take in so many details. I think you should be commended for all the details you noticed about this thing, because most people wouldn't have.
Like I said, I was trying to break it down in my mind of what I was seeing. I had the scope fixed on it and was watching it move. And I'm trying to, come in my head is like, is this a dog or is this a wolf? This is a very big dog or a very big wolf. And we don't have wolves around here. We have coyotes. And it was way larger than any of the 60, 70-pound coyotes that you might come into around here. And that's a large coyote if it's 70 pounds.
Yeah, that would be a big one. That would. Or you could do like this one guy I talked with who told me he had a 200-pound koi dog, a pet koi dog, a 200-pounder. I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, that is crazy. This next one is from Al Santoriga. Al wants to know if you noticed if it had one row or two rows of teeth.
No, I didn't notice. Like the other teeth questions, I could really only notice the canines hanging down a little bit.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, at that range with all the things going through your mind, I think you should be really commended for all the details you did notice, because most people wouldn't have picked up on half as many details as you did. So you did a really good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. This next one up is from Giuseppe Witchy, i.e. Goth Farmer. They want to know, do you think it could win a fight with a crocodile?
I do not think it could win a fight with a crocodile. I think a crocodile is a 2-ton apex predator with the strongest bite force on the planet. And I think it would probably drag it into the water.
Yeah, that's really a tough question to ask or to answer.
Right, crocodiles are monsters, though.
Yeah, they can be awfully big, but a big dog man, a 12-footer, could be the same weight or maybe possibly more. So
I would pay all the money I had in my pocket to find out.
You would. So if you had your druthers, you would like to have an encounter with a 12-footer.
No, I'm saying if I could see a dog man fight a crocodile, I would give all the money in my pocket to see that.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that would be interesting to see. It definitely would.
That would be insane. What a question.
Yeah, well, I think it'd end a lot quicker than what you would think with the power these things have, especially a big one. This next question is from Beatrice Ward, and Beatrice wants to know if it smiled.
It had its mouth open. I wouldn't say that it was smiling. It was more like a pant as it was moving across the power line.
All right, that answer is that. And then Donna Huff is a comment. It's not a question. She wants you to know that she's very proud of your girlfriend.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
And she's right. Yeah, your girlfriend's definitely a keeper. It looks like Larry Berland has the next question. He wants to know, have you had any other encounters or noticed anything weird?
No, unfortunately, I haven't had any other encounters than the one. I haven't noticed anything weird, but I would like to. I would like to have another encounter with it, and hopefully see this creature again.
Well, like I said, if you do have another encounter, I hope it's one that's not going to be really frightening. Hopefully, it's a benign one.
Right, even as a hunter, like we were talking about before, it's not even something that I'd want to hunt. It's just something I'd like to see and maybe get some more evidence of what I did see and have supportive evidence of what I'm seeing other than. And I'm greatly appreciative of everybody listening to me, but I would love to have had a picture to show you all of it.
Oh, well, yeah, there are so many things that you wish you could go back and do this, do that. But no, I think you handled everything really well. Like I said, you should be commended. You really should. This next question is from Stella, and Stella wants to know, did you sense a telepathic connection to the dog man?
I did not. Like I said, the only thing that was going through my mind was shocked of what I was seeing and trying to comprehend.
Yeah, shocked is an understatement. I can only imagine what must have been going through your mind at the time.
There was a lot of questions.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah, that's natural. D Truth wants to know, you mentioned that you have a little girl. Would you not take her into the woods after this?
I would. I'd advocate for anybody to go hunting and get outside and adventure and have your own adventures and hunts and stories to tell. I would take her in a heartbeat.
Well, she's got a great tutor right there to teach her everything that she would want to know about the woods. So, what more could she want? But the next question's from Stephen Toll, and Stephen wants to know, were the arms longer than the legs?
No, it was pretty proportionate. It was when it was standing upright, as far as I could tell, looking up at the thing, it was almost like bare arms, like hung pretty much level with the waist once the hands were down. It didn't raise its arms up or pull its hands up to its face. When it was rocking left to right, it had its arms down by its side.
I see. Yeah, it's easy to think that all dogmen have arms that are longer than their legs, but that's not the case. There are variants of canine types, that is, that have short little T Rex arms that they hold up in front of themselves, kind of bent up in a strange way. So, not all dogmen have freakishly long arms. That's just not the case. The next question is from Al Santoriga, and Al wants to know, was its head too large for its body?
Very proportionate. It was just a large animal. Nothing really seemed bigger than anything else on it. It had a large head, but it had a large body as well.
Yeah, some dogmen have disproportionately large heads, most don't. So that fits. D Truth is the next one up. He wants to know, did it look like any of the movie werewolves?
No, it wasn't man-like. Other than apart from standing on its back legs, it was very matching details to a canine. It looked hard like a canine. It had a longer snout. Its snout was longer than most coyotes or wolves that you see.
I see. Well, some do that, some don't. So there's no rhyme nor reason to that either.
Absolutely.
And I just erased or unstarred a really good question. I'll see if I can't go back and find that one. In the meantime, I've got another one for you from Michigan Meat Eater. He wants to know, when it was standing, what were its front legs/arms doing? How were they hanging?
Like I was talking about just a minute ago, they were hanging down by its side. They didn't hang out like a dog, like when you see a dog stand up, like he was mentioning how they'll T-Rex their arms. It didn't do that. They hung right down by its side.
All right, that answers that. And yeah, like you said, you did answer that already. I apologize for asking that same
No,
question.
absolutely. I don't mind answering any questions, and I appreciate everybody wanting to ask questions. I don't mind answering any one of them.
Good man. Well, that's appreciated. This next one is from Jackie, and she wants to know, did you stay in your still hunt position after you saw it?
Like I was talking in the beginning, I actually wasn't in a still hunting spot yet. I was scouting for the turkeys when I seen it, and I was moving. And after I seen it, I stayed there for a while and tried to see if I could see it or if it would come back in. But after that, no, I didn't stay there. I went on and looked for a bird.
You've got a lot of sand. Most people would have packed up and headed out of there, never to be seen again in those woods. So, yeah, that's impressive that you stayed. This next question is that's strange. I started, but there we go. It just popped up. Belle wants to know, have your friends ever experienced anything in the woods like this?
I have a friend that had a Sasquatch encounter, but I've never had a friend encounter the Dogman, and a lot of the people I speak to have never had any encounters like that from around here.
The funny thing about that is, I'll bet you have more friends and associates who've had encounters with these things than you'd believe, but you don't know it because they were afraid that you'd laugh at them or the usual things. So they just kept it to themselves.
Right, absolutely. And that was the way, I was thinking too. It's like a lot of people would probably be afraid to risk their credibility talking about something that they seen that was abnormal. But I was hoping maybe if I come on the show and being as a recognized hunter from the area that I am, maybe some other people might be able to come forward and talk about an experience that they had.
Well, that's admirable. You just might be right. Someone listening to this might contact me for that reason. You never know. The next question is, and this is a good question. It's from Jeremiah Johnson. And Jeremiah wants to know, did the ears twitch or scan when you put the scope and rifle on it?
They were pretty still when I had the scope up around its head. It didn't look like it was moving its ears around. They were kind of pointed back, and he was moving on out of the power line.
Well, not to beat a dead horse, but like I said, you really deserve a lot of credit to notice all these little details about it when all this was playing out. Most people, their brains would have gone to mush instantly. D Truth wants to know, what would you have done if it would have headed toward you?
That had been a hard call. I guess if it would have come after me, it wouldn't have been much I could have done other than, you either got in the truck and left or made a stand there. But it's hard to tell what the 22 Magnum would have done. But I'm sure I really don't think that it wanted anything to do with me.
Yeah, sounds like it didn't. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And yeah, in your case, it sounds like it definitely didn't. The next question is from Ryan Scott. And Ryan wants to know, do you think it was a female or a male?
I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't really tell. It wasn't something I was looking for through the scope.
Oh, I'm sure. And with all that fur, it'd be pretty hard to tell if it had indoor or outdoor plumbing anyway. So
It didn't have any. It didn't have like female breasts or anything, or you could tell it wasn't human like.
yeah, well, like I said, you should be commended for all the details that you did notice about this thing. So I think you did a really good job. The next question is from Michigan Meat Eater, and he wants to know, did you happen to go look for signs/tracks after the encounter?
No, I did not. I never went up there to where I seen it at.
Yeah, that's understandable. The next one on deck is from Summer Rain 07, and they want to know, thank you for sharing your experience with us. In your opinion, though, where do you think dogmen originate from? And are you still finding joy going into the woods?
I'm not 100% sure where they might originate from. I know that there's old stories of them, Indian wives' tales, and I know what was the first reported case was in Wisconsin, wasn't it?
Michigan, Wexford
Michigan.
County, Michigan, 1877. Yeah. but close to it.
It
Definitely
was
close
it
to
was
it.
loggers that had seen it, wasn't it?
In 1877, yeah, there's a little girl who got, well, it's alleged that she got nabbed by one, and she was with loggers at the time in Wexford County there. So you're right. You won.
And about going in the woods still, yeah, I'm still very passionate outdoorsman. I love going outside, and it wasn't something that would deter me or make me tell anyone else not to go in the woods. I believe everybody should do a little bit of outdoorsing. As electronic as today is, it's good to get out.
Yeah, there's nothing like being in the woods. If more people spent time out there, the world would be a better place. It really would. The next question's from Red Edge Savage, and they want to know, before you saw it, did you notice anything like misty fog or shadows or other strange things?
No, it was a clear day. It was in April in Virginia. It was just a perfect hunting and turkey morning. There was no really clouds. It was about 10 a.m.
It was a normal morning until it showed up.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say it was. The next question is the last one I'm going to post. We're almost at the 1 hour mark. This one's from Isaac Millette. And Isaac wants to know, can you tell us more of your acquaintances' stories of Bigfoot, and how did you feel when they spoke of Bigfoot or any other being like Bigfoot or Dogman?
They were very passionate when they told me the story. I definitely believe their story. I'm sure they probably wouldn't mind if I told it. They were camping, and they said they had large rocks thrown at them at a camp, and they don't really know what could have thrown the rocks. Other than that, they didn't really see one. Or
Yeah, well, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that throwing rocks, that's pretty typical for Sasquatch when they decide to mess with people. Thank goodness they're so accurate, and very rarely do they ever hit us.
right, I've never had an experience with a Sasquatch or seen any tracks or found anything like that. Um, the only abnormal experience that I've seen is I encountered a dogman.
Yeah, well, you've got a lot of years ahead of you. It's hard to say what the future holds. It really is. But like I said, if you do have another encounter, hope it's another good one. But time will tell. Well, before we get out of here, Aaron, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
I'd like to thank you for having me on the show and let me come on here and share my story with everybody. And just thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been great having you. And people have encounters like yours where the dog man doesn't try to terrify them. It just moves on, and that's all there is to it. And a lot of these eyewitnesses, I hear them say that their encounter isn't fitting for coming on the show and sharing because it's not frightening. All I care about is if it's an honest experience, if it actually happened, if the person's being truthful about having the experience, that's all that matters. Couldn't care less if it is a frightening one or one that's about as benign as they can be. So if you've had an encounter that you don't think is frightening enough to qualify for coming on the show, yeah, please don't think that way, because that's just not the case at all. It really isn't. But having said that, Aaron, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing the details of that experience with us. I really appreciate it.
And like I said, thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to come on here and tell my story and talk about where I'm from and just basically what went on for me that day hunting.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to give you a platform to do it. So thanks again for coming on. But having said that, yeah, thanks again so much for your time, and have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll see ya. Well, that's another one wrapped. Before I go, I just want to remind you about two things. Number one, like I mentioned at the head of the show, if you're a premium member, I'm going to be publishing, well, I guess it's 10:01 Eastern time now, so it just published a bonus episode for premium members only. If you're not a premium member of the podcast version of the show, because there's a podcast version of every episode and there is a YouTube version of every show. If you want to be able to listen to the podcast version of the show, and especially tonight's bonus episode for premium members, if you're not a premium member, then all you have to do is just go to dogmanencounters.com, visit the podcast page, and then right there you'll find instructions on how to become one. Or if you just want to start listening to the podcast version of the show, then you can find the instructions and links to do it that way there as well. The second thing, if you've had a Dogman encounter that you'd like to talk with me about because you need help dealing with it, coming to terms with it, or if you're not having problems dealing with it, but you'd like to come on the show, for example, and share it with the listeners, all you would need to do is just go to dogmanencounters.com, submit a report. If you do that, then I'd be more than happy to contact you and talk about this experience you've had or experiences that you've had with you. And also, if you want to be a guest, schedule a recording. So it's as easy as that. And also, too, a lot of the listeners have had Sasquatch sightings and experiences. If you've had a Sasquatch sighting and would like to be a guest on my Bigfoot sighting, that's my Bigfoot podcast, then please go to mybigfootsighting.com and submit a guest request. If you do that, then, of course, I'll contact you to get that all set up. But the only requirement for that is you have to have had at least one Sasquatch sighting. But having said all that, like I said, thanks again so much for listening, everyone. I really do appreciate it and hope you have a great weekend. So I'll catch you next week.